Do you sometimes have too many ideas in your mind and you choose to present all of it at once because you couldn't decide? It only gets your audience confused. Here in this module, I'll show you how to set up your goal in delivering a simple and highly impactful message. First of all, you need to know your market, medium, and message before you deliver. Let's take a detailed look into these three segments, shall we? Market. It's the most important segment you should look into before you think about your presentation. It's definitely important to know exactly who you're delivering your message to. For instance, if you're going to sell an educational product, your target market is definitely schools. Next is your medium. This simply means knowing where and how you'll be presenting your message. It can be as simple as a casual conversation among your friends, a presentation in front of a class, or speaking on a stage. Lastly, it's your message. Once again, we need to focus on the core message of your presentation when it comes to defining your goal. A core message should be summed up in one short and memorable sentence. This short sentence is the main message you intend to convey, and the rest of the speech is to further elaborate it. Now that you've set your goal, it's time to think of the results you wish to have at the end of your speech. To begin with the end in mind before you deliver your message. Ask yourself, what do you want your audience to do during or after the speech? This is your main objective at the end of the day. You want your audience to take an action. So you must have a call to action at the end of your speech. What do you want your audience to do? Do you want them to fill out a form, go to your website, or buy your product? You need to decide your call to action. Here's an example. If you want your audience to purchase your back-end offer, you need to present a relevant topic that's related to your product. So, your speech should educate them on the problems they're facing and how your offer can solve it. As you share with them, they'll get more curious and they want to know more about your product. Next, spend the last 10 to 15 minutes launching the product or pitching your latest offers. This is commonly practiced by most motivational or seminar speakers to push their back-end products or services at the end of their speech. You might be surprised how this final pitching really moves people into taking action. Seminars are not only limited to sales, public speaking is a universal skill that can be used in any field. An influential speaker can create or increase an awareness about an important issue that's affecting the general public. In addition, through the use of effective public speaking, mutual understanding can be created between the speaker and the audience, no matter whether it's a large or a small crowd. And of course, public speaking is a powerful skill that can motivate your audience positively into making a difference in their lives. And now I'll reveal the few ways to deliver a simple but highly impactful presentation in 30 minutes. Most beginners spend a great deal of time in preparing the presentation slides. But it's more important you spend time to rehearse and practice your presentation. So here's a quick formula for you to create simple but impactful slides. First, create your slides by using PowerPoint. The presentation slides are very much like what you see in this video. The purpose of the presentation slides is to aid your flow of speech and also to deliver your key points clearly to your audience. Thinking of a title that will create a great impact? You can figure out the presentation title from your core message. As mentioned earlier, your core message can be summed up in one short sentence and can also be used as a title. Next, keep your slides as clean as possible. Don't overload them with too many words. Just a few words on your key points will do. It's the speaker's duty to elaborate the key points to the audience. Here's a tip. Bold and color the key words to make an impression on your audience. The presentation slides are not just to keep your speech smooth, but also to aid your audience to remember your key points. Lastly, remember the KISS principle. Keep it simple, silly. Do not use fancy words or jargon. It's pointless if your audience can barely understand what you're talking about. In fact, the simpler the speech is, the more communication between you and your audience will be effective. To craft an effective speech, the elements here can be applied to any speech: problem, cause, solution, and benefit. These elements are similar to the ones you can find in a successful sales letter: problem, promise, proof, and price. In the seminar context, you'll find all these four elements are useful for you to brainstorm your topics. It usually creates a greater impact when your audience is informed about the problem they're facing, what's the cause of it, and most importantly, What's the solution and benefit of solving the problem? After crafting your speech on the presentation slides, next is to draft your speech. Once you've decided your core message as shown earlier in the video, list down 5 main topics for the presentation. In each topic, find another 3 to 4 key points to support it. Don't hesitate to just throw out whatever you have in your mind. They may be your backup points. Finally, summarize the whole presentation with a conclusion. You can start your presentation with a simple introduction on your topic, then follow up with the main points to convey your message. Your main points should be backed up by some interesting stories, especially if they're from your own experience, an illustration to help your audience visualize the whole thing. After you've conveyed your message to them, you can now focus on moving your audience into taking action. To do this, you can now relate the benefits of having your product and how it can solve the problems you mentioned earlier in your speech. If you recall the previous module, we covered goal setting and how to convey a simple but highly motivating speech in 30 minutes or less. Likewise, this module will focus more on showing you how to be a superstar speaker in just 3 days. Public speaking in just 3 days. Is it possible? The answer is yes, if you complete the 4 things on this checklist. In each lesson, you'll be exposed to different methods to overcome the common public speaking barriers faced by most speakers, especially how to build up your confidence when you're conducting presentations, and of course how to overcome your stage fright with a few easy techniques. Many of us have the wrong insight about introverts. Do you think this statement is true? Introversion is just a social preference. Similar to personal preference, people are free to choose what they want to be. Some people choose to be extroverts, and of course, there's people who prefer to be introverts. But being an introvert does not mean that you can't speak in front of a crowd. Many influential speakers are introverts as soon as they step down from the stage. That said, the single biggest misconception about introverts is that they're socially anxious and shy. And because of this popular myth, people have an impression about introverts, including the introverts themselves. They think they can't speak in front of a crowd. The honest truth is, anyone can be a great public speaker if they choose to be. Now, we'll begin the 3-day program on how to be a superstar speaker. Once again, focus on your goal setting. Have a clear goal in your mind about what you want to achieve. Here are some important questions to ask yourself when you're setting goals. Who's your audience? What's your message? And what's your medium? Once you have your goal set, plan your presentation. In order to craft your presentation, you'll need to know how long's your speech and what's the main focus in the speech. Unless you're preparing a long seminar, the recommended duration is 10 to 45 minutes. Anything longer, your audience will lose focus and you won't have their attention. Next, define the core message for your speech. If you're clear about what your main focus is, there won't be a problem in defining your core message. And then, you can start working on your presentation by using PowerPoint. In order to have a smooth flow in your speech, you need to structure your speech. The flow of your speech determines the effectiveness of delivering your message to your audience. First things first, start your speech with a warm welcome. Break the ice, then introduce yourself and explain why you're standing on the stage. Building rapport is as important as conveying the message itself. It affects whether you can move your audience to respond to your call to action. But don't spend too much time in the introduction. Visuals are used to aid the memory of your audience about your presentation and product. Research shows that most people remember visuals better than words, so make full use of these. Transitions between your main points helps to break down your core message into individual parts and at the same time serves as a short break for your audience. The transition keeps your audience on the track with you from point to point. Examples of transitions include "this is because," "speaking of this," and so much more. The closing is the most important part. You can end your speech with a conclusion that ties up everything you'd mentioned earlier. The conclusion should summarize, make an appeal, and lead your audience to answer the call to action. The implementation of stories supports your core message. People have a greater impression about something when there's a story. The use of stories in the presentation gives your audience a short break as well as brightening up the atmosphere, because stories are not only easy to remember, but also exciting. Once you've structured your speech, start rehearsing your presentation. There are 3 major elements for delivering a high-impact presentation: facial expression, body language, and the tone of your voice. Up until now, we put our focus on how to structure your speech, which is mostly related to words. But these 3 factors are as important as the words you use in delivering your message. The 3 elements should be put into practice. All in all, practice always makes perfect. When you're familiar with the speech, your confidence level will shoot up. When you have a clear goal in mind to share a message with your audience, it means you're ready for your live presentation. Most importantly, besides practice, get constructive feedback from your audience. The feedback, no matter positive or negative, will help you improve your public speaking skills. Remember, be ready to receive any kind of feedback and learn from your mistakes. Here we are at day 2 of the program. Figure out your own style of speaking and personality. No one's the same. We're all born different. There's no need to follow what other speakers do, but learn from them, their techniques, body language, tone of voice, and so much more. So, avoid copycat speeches. Imagine you're in a seminar now, with a speaker telling you about something monotonously. Or, imagine you're in a lecture hall, listening to your lecturer teaching in a neutral tone, with no excitement about his subject. Do you still want to be in the room? You can barely remember what the person's talking about. So, avoid a monotone when you're delivering your presentation through practice. Dressing up is one of the ways to illustrate your style. People always remember your first impression before they get to know you personally. So, beware of your appearance. Dress smart or formal. You can always wear a coat, blazer, or suit. Wearing a coat will always make you stand out among the crowd. There's a need for you to appear as an authority among your audience, so that your audience can recognize you straight away when they look at you. It's worth mentioning once again, first impressions are important when you meet someone for the first time. Always be neat and presentable, because this creates a positive appeal to your audience. There are many ways to style a speech. Choose the one that makes you feel the most comfortable and suits you best in presenting yourself. No one knows you better than you yourself. Don't force yourself to become someone you're not. After deciding your own style of speech, be confident in your style. Then your positive energy will be passed down to your audience, and they'll be more likely to listen to you. Humor is a great way to liven up the atmosphere in the room, but don't overuse jokes in your presentation, or else people will be distracted from the track. Don't make fun of others in your jokes. Instead, use self-deprecating humor. If your jokes fail to make your audience laugh, don't be discouraged. Let's have a quick glance on the jokes. There are some principles to remember when you're approaching this style of humor. Be sure to use a clean joke. Don't share jokes that are sexual, dirty, or offensive. In an unofficial context, when you're talking to your friends, people don't mind sexual jokes, but it's totally different when you're on a stage. Stereotyping is a serious problem even now, but in a seminar, remember that racism and bigotry will definitely offend your audience. Your audience might consist of people from different backgrounds and cultures, so you need to be sensitive. You've done all the preparation in the last 2 days. Now you'll need to practice a 5-minute speech in front of a small group on your 3rd day. It will be good to record your voice and speak on the computer's microphone. Imagine you're presenting your speech in a live presentation. Through the recording, you can find out the mistakes you made and learn from them. When you're conducting a presentation, one of 2 things will happen. Either your presentation will take up more time than you think, or your presentation will be finished earlier than you scheduled. The timing of your presentation is always unpredictable. When you come across this problem, you can use this spontaneous response to end it on time. If you finish your main presentation ahead of time, this is a good problem to have. You'll have more time to open up the floor for your question and answer session with your audience, or make full use of the free time left by sharing 1 or 2 stories as a bonus. So always prepare 1 or 2 backup stories. If you encounter the second problem, it definitely is not a good thing. What should you do if you go overtime? To prevent this problem, rehearse before the actual presentation and check your timing. Always time your presentation when you rehearse. With enough practice, you can predict the total time taken and make some changes and tune your presentation accordingly. Start off by removing the fluff and take off less important points to shorten the presentation. But don't throw away all the ideas you can't present. Instead, have them as your backup points or stories. Whether you're rehearsing or during the actual presentation, you can always have a timekeeper to warn you 15 minutes and 5 minutes before your time is up. Unexpected things always happen, so as a public speaker, you'll need to act spontaneously in different scenarios. If you're out of time, but you're still on stage, what do? You can jump straight to the conclusion and call for action. Although you may not have enough time, make sure you take all the important points and summarize them. Then conclude with a call to action. Second, apologize for running out of time and ask a member of the audience to meet you at the backstage for further inquiries. Some of the audience may be interested to buy your product after the presentation. Do not hesitate to give them a call to action, even though you're not on stage. Have you noticed when others are presenting, they tend to have the and ah as they speak? These are called brain gaps. There are a few easy steps to eliminate these brain gaps. Keep silent for a while instead of using the mms or ahs. The audience can understand that you're gathering your thoughts in your pauses. To further avoid this, you can keep small notes with key points in your pocket. People tend to have brain gaps when they're nervous as well, so breathe normally and speak slowly to calm yourself down. Once again, welcome to Marketing from the Stage. In this module, I'll recap everything from the previous modules and show you how to put it together to create a compelling speech and also how to handle your audience. The ability to move your audience to respond to your call to action is what makes a difference between a highly successful presentation and a mediocre speech. Wouldn't it be a waste if you gave a top-notch presentation but didn't make full use of it? If you did a good job, your audience would want more from you, and that's where a call to action comes in. Every speaker needs to learn how to use a call to action. The key to have a successful presentation is by getting your audience to involve and participate. The simplest and fastest way to have your audience participate in your speech is to use an icebreaker in the beginning of your presentation. Because one of your roles as a speaker is to be a quasi-facilitator as well. Keep in mind that the presentation is all about your audience, not about boasting your ego on stage. The purpose of having the presentation is to move your audience into taking action. Don't underestimate the importance of 100% engagement with your audience. You can begin the icebreaker session with a pair or group exercise. This will definitely help them to get to know each other and create a more relaxing atmosphere. Sometimes at the beginning of a presentation or seminar, the speaker will ask the audience to close their eyes and visualize. This is actually a process for the audience to relax and quiet themselves and prepare them for the presentation later. How to spice up your presentation and prevent it from getting dull and boring for your audience? Here's what you can do. Give them quizzes, challenges, or questions to have them recall the content from your speech earlier. This will keep them awake and they'll be more alert. Here are more tips on how to deliver a high-impact speech. There's always room for improvement. As I mentioned earlier, keep it as short as possible. It should not exceed 45 minutes. To keep your speech as short as possible, remember the KISS principle as well. Keep it simple, silly. The simpler the speech is, the more effective the speech is. Nothing else is more important than this. Stick to the main focus of the presentation. To be able to deliver a presentation with a clear goal, you need to always focus on the main objective. When you're stuck in the middle of your presentation, you can always revise your presentation once again from the beginning, which is a good way to keep you on the right track. Like I mentioned earlier, stories are an important element. Make full use of them in your presentation, especially when it's your own testimony that can support your speech. Last but not least, get your audience to participate. In order to make a successful presentation, it's crucial to have a question and answer session. This is the time for you to interact with your audience by answering their questions. How the speaker interacts with the audience is important to gauge whether the audience will take action after your presentation or not. Don't worry about it. There are ways to handle this effectively. It's ideal to save your last 5 to 10 minutes for the Q&A session. You can mention this in the beginning of your speech to avoid interruptions in the middle of your presentation. Make use of this 5 to 10 minutes because answering questions from your audience helps you to build trust and establish your credibility as an expert in your field. During the Q&A session, it will be good to stay calm and listen to questions from your audience. Repeat the question after the audience asks. By doing this, you're sharing the question with the other audience in the room, as well as giving yourself some time to gather the answer for the question. The body language in this session is fundamental. Do not point at the selected member using your index finger. Instead, stretch your palm or thumb. Be aware of this. Pointing to your audience with your index finger might offend your audience. Unexpected things do happen in the Q&A session. You're probably wondering, what if I come across a difficult audience? If you receive an unrelated question, kindly explain to them that it's beyond the scope of your topic and then ask the person to take a seat. Don't forget about this. Each one of them is a potential customer. So be gentle and have patience when you're handling a difficult crowd. When you receive an argumentative question, answer it quickly and move on. There's no point arguing with an audience member when it comes to these kinds of questions. You're not in a debate session. Be courteous and professional to all of them. If someone asks you a question which you definitely know will require a long explanation, tell them to come backstage after the speech to clear their doubts. The previous modules dealt only with preparation. Here comes the technical part, as well as the core of marketing from the stage. How to do the marketing from the stage. Don't stress yourself too much about this for now. As a beginner, there are ways and tips for you to master it. If you're a salesperson, you'll definitely need to master the art of back-end selling. This single skill makes all the difference between a successful and mediocre speaker. Besides the 5 to 10 minutes for your Q&A session, save the last 15 minutes of your presentation to pitch your back-end product. Your back-end product must be relevant to the previous topic of your presentation so the audience can understand the purpose of the whole presentation. If your product requires a higher level of understanding, don't hesitate to take some time to demonstrate your product to the audience, because not everyone will have time to read the instructions. You can demonstrate by using PowerPoint, or keep it simple by using a whiteboard. Then, implement the price slashing technique. This is a powerful psychological tactic commonly used in sales. For instance, you tell your audience that the product is worth $25,000 using real-world value. Then make an announcement that those who are attending the seminar on that day will get a special offer. If they choose to get the offer at the seminar, it's only for $2,000. Can you imagine the reaction of your audience when you reveal the final price? It will be an irresistible offer to them. The scarcity technique can be used alongside the price slashing technique. Right after you announce the offer of $2,000 to the audience, drop another bomb by saying that it's only limited to the first 15 people who sign up. The rest will have to pay an additional $1,000 for the product. First things first, before you start your presentation, have a short introduction about yourself. This is the time where you can build up trust and credibility with your audience using a process called seeding. Seed your program throughout the presentation. Make subtle hints about your program to prepare them for it. The seeding process will eventually help you to build up anticipation to your call to action by the end of your seminar. The seeding process is vital for you to prevent any unwanted hiccups at the end of your presentations, so it won't surprise them when you start talking about your product or training. Let's say if your product is going to be a training program and you never introduce yourself a trainer at the beginning of the speech, they'll be surprised and start to doubt your credibility as a trainer. The seeding process is one of the most important parts in your presentation that will affect your call to action. There are a few techniques here to enhance the process. First, prepare a few testimonials from previous and active customers to build up your credibility in your field, and also to tell your audience about your capabilities indirectly. Then, you can mention your upcoming program casually. The tone of your voice comes into play in this part. Don't sound like the upcoming program is the main purpose of this presentation. Mention your program twice and one more time in your call to action. Next, show some photos or videos about your past programs. This seeding process will give your audience the big picture about how your program will be like and how it's conducted. So it won't come across as a hard sell because they're getting more interested about your program. Now that you've already delivered your presentation, what's the next step for your attendees? Address a problem that your target audience is facing. The problem must be closely related to them. Raise the question and ask your audience. Then tell them that they're definitely not going to do it by themselves or figure things out the hard way. You'll provide a far easier solution for them. You need to make them believe that you can provide an instant solution for them. Once again, this goes back to the importance of seeding. This is the time where you can transition to proposing a better alternative that will shortcut their success or solve a problem right away. And yes, it's definitely good timing to introduce your upcoming program as well. After this, you can ask for permission from your audience to talk about it in more detail. Ask questions like, "Is it okay if I tell you more about it?" Or, "With your permission, I'd like to tell you more about it." After this, you can move on to your opener for the program. Inform your audience about the date and time, location, and details of your training program in the opener. You can summarize your program by informing them about the outcomes. Tell them what they'll get or learn in the program. Here's one thing to take note of. Don't give specific dates or locations. You can always update them once you've finalized everything. Features tell and benefits sell. A successful presentation not only informs your audience how good your product is, it also describes how your product can help them solve their problem. Emphasize benefits, not features. For instance, if you're talking about improving the performance of your personal computer, instead of talking about 8 gigabytes of RAM, tell them what they get out of it. Talk about the speed of their personal computer once they've installed the 8 gigabytes of RAM. Unfortunately, most public speakers overlook this. They explain the features of the product, but forget to tell the audience how it benefits them. This is not to say that features are not important. Without the features of the product, you cannot relate them to the benefits. Always talk about the features followed by the benefits. When you're talking about something, always keep in mind ATC. Always think customer. Your audience will probably be thinking, "What sort of proof do you have that it will solve my problem?" That's when social proofs come into play. People will be more convinced if you can show them proofs about your product. You can implement your own testimonials into your presentation, or testimonials from your previous customers. On the other hand, endorsements are slightly different from testimonials. What makes them different? Testimonials are the experiences or stories from your customers, while endorsements are branding by celebrities and popular personalities. They might not even have used your product, but they're showing you support and telling the general public that you have credibility. The next marketing skill you need to know is the price slashing technique. If you recall the last few modules, you might have heard of this term. But let us have a look at it once again, and you'll know how this technique can help you in marketing from the stage. There's a procedure for this technique. Do the build-up, tell your final price, and implement the scarcity factor. These procedures help you to build up the atmosphere across the room, and finally create an irresistible temptation for your audience to answer your call to action. To do the build-up, you'll need a demonstration in PowerPoint or a whiteboard. List out all the products and the price accordingly. Then, while you're pitching your latest offer, slash the price for each product in a slow pace. This is a psychological tactic where by the time you're slashing your price, the emotions of your audience are tackled. Then, tell your final price. This is the main action which creates the irresistible temptation for your audience. People always love discounts. When you tell them the final price is actually worth much less than the real-world value, they'll be tempted. At the same time, implement the scarcity factor. Bear in mind, people love limited editions. When you inform your audience that the offer is only limited to 50 people, they're more likely to be tempted. Call to action is a term that's been mentioned many times in this course. That's because your speech will be nothing without a call to action, and it's worthless without a successful call to action. This is the step when you get people to act after your speech. Besides the price slashing technique, you can drop a final bomb to the audience to move them into the call to action. Fast action bonuses and guarantees. For fast action bonuses, you'll provide additional bonuses if they take action to join your program only today in the seminar. CDs or DVDs, memberships, merchandise, and the best bonuses will be the certificates. Guarantees are another technique, but it's an optional technique for you. You can offer a guarantee or a full refund if the program is not up to their expectation, but only on the first day of training. Now that you already know how to create your presentation and design your back-end offer, there's still one more crucial element we have yet to address. Can you guess what it is? Yep, that's right. Filling the room. You can't make a presentation without an audience, right? And if you have next to no idea on how to rope in targeted participants to your seminar, worry not. You and I are just about to cover that in this module. While there are many ways you can go about finding participants to attend your seminar, I'll show you my top favorite methods that bring in the most results, and you can apply them for your seminar business too. Let's get started. We begin with this surefire method of getting participants to your seminar. How can you get all the people you need other than by approaching the source themselves, which are the organizers and seminar companies? This is the fastest and easiest way to get your room filled. Through the experiences they have gained from all their past events and seminars, they have already built the connections and know exactly how to find the people you're looking for. Approaching them is low risk with no logistics on your part because they handle it all for you. Exciting, huh? But usually they'll seek a percentage of your back-end sales. It is, however, a little bit too risky to depend on just one method. So I'll introduce you to yet another surefire way to get the word out for your seminar business: newspaper advertising. Newspaper ads are time-tested and have been around longer than any other form of advertising. With newspaper advertising, you can reach out to larger pools of audiences, especially if they're not good with computers. But keep in mind, newspaper ads can be costly. If you're just about to start your own seminar business, you can choose another way to advertise your seminar. While newspaper advertising is time-tested and proves to be effective, I have to say that as far as budget goes, it's not really for everyone. So, if you have little appetite for risk, consider email advertising. Email advertising is a good way to approach your target audience directly. Email advertising is incredibly affordable and easy to access. With the help of autoresponders, you can track your email statistics and read your report to see the performance of your email marketing. Note, though, that due to the low barrier of entry, email marketers constantly bombard subscribers with email promotions, one after the other. The good news is that with some tweaks to your email promotions, you can make yours stand out and increase your open rate. You can insert pictures, catchy subject lines, and a more compelling call to action. Don't overload your email promo with just words. Keep your words as simple and direct as possible. Keep in mind, an attractive subject line can make or break your subscriber's decision to open the email or not. Facebook advertising is a method used in this new era. A survey showed that in 2012, Facebook already had a total of 800 million users, and their user base is consistently increasing every year. This shows the wide reach you have by posting advertisements through Facebook. Besides, with all the different groups in Facebook, you can access your target group more easily. Instead of targeting all 800 million users who may or may not be interested in your product, you instead target the 5,000 users that you know will definitely be interested in learning about your product. By using this method, you can reach to the younger demographic groups. This group of people spends more time in Facebook than working adults and seniors. Before your actual presentation, a trial can be done to attract more people to come. The chance of people to go for something free is higher. The audience will have the chance to experience with you the trial before they get the real thing. This is a pull method, which is always more effective to attract larger numbers of people than the push method. Instead of pushing them to come unwillingly, this attracts them and gets them to come. After they experience the talk at least once, it will be easier to get them back to the same kind of seminar next time, which is your actual presentation. Host the free preview 2 to 4 weeks before the actual presentation. In this module, I'll teach you 6 easy ways to eliminate stage fright. If you've never stood before a crowd before, or cannot imagine yourself doing that, don't worry. I'll show you how to overcome this unfounded fear and break your mental barriers. You might not be able to grasp it yet, but I firmly believe that the ability to speak is a learnable skill and anyone can master it. Yes, even you too. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're climbing the corporate ladder, the ability to speak confidently and influence the people around you is a vital skill to learn. Do you have a fear of public speaking? Nearly everyone does. According to the Book of Lists, public speaking is ranked as the number 1 fear by its survey takers, outranking even the fear of death. Yes, you heard that right. Hard to believe, eh? No wonder so many people experience stage fright. Experts explain that the reason people feel fearful of public speaking is because of their anticipation of emotional pain and psychological stress. People define fear as the anticipation of pain. So, when people start to imagine the worst-case scenario of being humiliated, subject to deeply embarrassing moments, and how others will think of them negatively, they become fearful of it. But that's just it. Most of the time, the worst things that we imagine usually don't happen. Let me ask you this. How often have your worries been realized? However, no matter how many times our logical mind tells us about this, our emotions override our rationale. The obvious symptoms: sweaty palms, racing heartbeat, and a vivid visualization of all the worst things that can happen while you present on stage. That's when stage fright shows on your physical being, when you allow it to conquer you on a mental and emotional level. So, as you can see, you have to be in the state of flow and overcome stage fright on a mental and emotional level first. While some people may have the gift of gab, everyone else has to go through training. And the good news is that with training, you too can overcome this shortcoming. I have a set of 6 easy steps that you can follow to eliminate the stage fright syndrome. If you have yet to overcome the anxiety of speaking in public, there's no better time than now to learn this. Let's begin with the first step. To conquer the unfounded fear of speaking on stage, focus on the audience, not how you perform on stage. Always remember that the audience that comes to your presentation is more interested in your main message. Of course, how well you deliver your presentation is just as important, and it figures greatly in the grand scheme of things. But for beginners, you only need to remember your main message, not word for word. First and foremost, how you perceive yourself is more important than how others think of you. If you have a low perception of yourself, how can you expect others to hold you in high regards? Likewise, if you radiate positive energy, and energy does not lie, even the least aware person will know. The more you're familiar in public speaking, the more confident you can carry yourself. So, the second step is to get started with your first test audience. Start small. Begin your first presentation with a small group of people. Consider this your baby steps in overcoming your fear of speaking on stage. Starting off with a small group helps you build gradual confidence before you handle larger groups. Practice in front of people you trust and are familiar with, such as your family members or close friends. You don't need to kick things off with a full-length presentation. A short speech will do. When you're comfortable delivering presentations to small groups, then you can increase the audience size gradually. Raise the bar. Talk to bigger groups of people. Step 3. Accept that everyone makes mistakes. No one's born perfect. We all make mistakes, and it's only through learning that we can improve. Great speakers and teachers are not necessarily born with excellent charisma, many of them trained. They learn from their mistakes, gain experience, improve themselves, and became who they are today. Remember, if you goof up in your speeches, don't be too hard on yourself. Instead, give yourself opportunities to learn and improve. Sadly, people give up after their first attempt, especially when it's not a good experience. Then they start to avoid the opportunities to try again and stop where they made mistakes, and start filling their mind with negative thoughts and doubts. I want to assure you that any skill worth having is worth learning. So don't quit at the sight of your first setback. This leads to step 4. Replace your negative thoughts with words of encouragement. Don't forget, your audience usually has short-term memories, unless you deliver a message of impact, something we'll discuss in another module. You know that survey we talked about earlier? Did you know that those who listed public speaking as their number one fear cited the main cause an inability to handle embarrassing situations? But in reality, these humiliating moments don't stay with people for long. Not with the way information and news travels these days. Do your friends still talk about your embarrassing moments back in school today? I didn't think so. Think about it. What's the worst that can ever happen? Your speech is non-compelling, that's just about it. Now that we established that this is the worst that could happen, which really isn't much to worry about anyway, I want you to ask yourself, what are the best things that could happen to you? People rushing to the table with their credit cards out of their wallets to buy your program, standing ovations, thunderous applause, moving your audience to your command. Now these are things worth looking forward to, right? So, why spend your energy worrying about things that have less of a probability happening, when you can look forward to the greatest rewards you can reap from your seminar business? Now the 5th step. This is an important step to deal with your obvious symptoms of stage fright that gives you away in front of everyone. Not only can we convert our thoughts, but our physical behavior as well. For example, think of the pounding heartbeat and racing pulse as adrenaline rushes. It will make you feel alert and energetic. If your leg is shaking or trembling, walk around the stage to help you convey confidence and positive energy. At the same time, enroll 100% to your audience. Got a blank mind? Take a short pause and don't rush your presentation. Tell a story about a funny thing that happened recently. This gives you time to gather your thoughts back to your message, as well as brightening the mood of the audience. While I'm at it, here's an extra tip for you. Avoid cold beverages when you have a dry mouth or throat, since cold drinks constrict the throat. It can be easily remedied with a sip of warm water or tea. And finally, the last step. To boost your confidence level, recall familiar faces. It can be your family members or close friends that provide you positive energy. Or you can find a few key people among the audience that you're comfortable identifying with or feel inspired to give your best. There will always be a few among the audience on the floor that always give out motivating facial expressions or body language. You can identify them through their nods, smiles, or displays of interest. So, instead of looking at the floor or wall, look for a few key people that you find motivate you on the stage. All in all, when you get down to the bottom line, speaking on stage is not much different from your day-to-day conversation with your friends. It requires you to handle the situation better on a more emotional and personal level than ever when you go on stage to engage multiple groups of people in a single presentation. Also, let you be you. How you think of yourself comes first, before how others perceive you. So, now you know, public speaking isn't just for the extroverts and the outgoing. Everyone stands the same chance to be a superstar speaker in their own right. See you in the next module. This module will teach you how to deliver your message through webinars. I thought of including this as one of the final chapters in this training program because without it, it won't be complete. And with everything you've learned so far, you can practically apply the same skills you learned in the seminar business and bring it online to reach out to the world. First of all, let's have a look at what webinar is all about. The word webinar is the portmanteau of two words, web and seminar. It's the same as how you deliver your message in a seminar, but through the internet. As the internet grew tremendously throughout the world in the 1990s, webinar has become commonly used by speakers to reach out further to people without geographical boundaries. By using webinars, you can access your audience with just a few clicks of the mouse and get yourself ready just by turning on your webcam and microphone. So, why should you consider doing webinars as well? Listen, if you're already great at conducting live seminars, doing webinars can generate another income stream for you. For only a small budget, you get high profits, all for the price of webinar software, which is significantly cheaper than throwing out a full-blown seminar event that involves massive logistics and planning. With the virtually unlimited coverage of attendees throughout the internet, you can literally reach just about anyone in the world. Webinars create big reach and full engagement with the attendees. You're not only limited to just one country, but the people interested in your content can attend from their homes in virtually any country. Besides, a webinar is an effective way to convey your message to the whole world anytime, anywhere. As long as you can connect your computer to the internet, you can host your own webinar. Isn't this exciting for you as a speaker? There's no need to go through all the hassles of logistics planning, such as arranging the location, setting up the hall, finding crew members, and much more. Now that you have the basic knowledge about webinars, you can start by drafting your own webinars. Start off by thinking of this as a sales letter to the audience. To do a webinar, it's more or less the same as how to do a seminar. You have a purpose for doing the webinar, just like you want people to call to action in your seminar. The recommended time for your webinar will be the same as your seminar. Keep it short, with 45 to 60 minutes per webinar. The maximum length of the webinar will be 70 minutes. Anything longer than this will definitely snap the attention of your audience. You can spend the first 5 minutes by introducing yourself. Remember the seating process in the last module? Same as applied to the webinar, don't skip this step of the seating process because you think that it's just a video conference with the audience. This can affect your audience to answer your call to action at the end of your webinar as well. Next, the content occupies 25 to 30 minutes of your webinar. Present the speech related to your product and reserve the final 15 minutes to do your pitching on the product. The only difference in your pitching in the webinar is the method of your call to action. You can call your audience into action by sending them to the back of the conference room in your seminar, but how do you call your audience into action in your webinar? You need to link them to another website for them to answer the call to action. Keep in mind to provide the link to your audience while you're doing the pitching. All right, ready to hold your own webinar but don't know where to start? Worry not. Running a webinar is a lot simpler than you think, even if you've not done one before. Quite simply, you need only one main software, and I recommend GoToWebinar.com. This is one of the primary software tools commonly used by speakers and trainers to conduct their webinars and online training. On the previous slides, we discussed big reach and full engagement. We reach out to people all around the world. But how do we get them to attend your webinar? First thing you can do is advertise in Facebook. As mentioned in the previous modules, Facebook advertising allows you to reach out to a large number of people in different groups. For the webinar, you probably will never have a chance to meet them in person. The best way to attract them is through Facebook. Other than this, make use of the affiliates to do the marketing for you. This group of people is like organizers or seminar companies, acting as the middle person between you and the prospects. They promote your product and earn commission from there. This is how affiliate marketing works. Finally, build up a mailing list. The mailing list can be either from your own connections or you can buy the list. Now on to some tips to help you conduct webinars more effectively. According to GoToWebinar, they conducted a survey about attendees' preference regarding webinars, and from it, there are 5 things to take note. First and foremost, organize your webinar on a weekly basis. 88% of the attendees only attend 1 webinar in a week, and fewer attend 2 or 3 webinars a week. When it comes to the preferred time of day to attend the webinar, the ideal time is 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Many of them attend webinars in the morning because of the convenience with their daily schedule and routine. Some said that when they attended the webinar in the office, they had a chance to discuss it with their colleagues, which they felt was more interesting because of the sharing of knowledge together. Research shows that attendees are more likely to attend a webinar on Tuesday, followed by Wednesday and Thursday. The reason for this is because Monday and Friday always get filled up by some catch-up and last-minute emergency. In conclusion, with the ideal time we discussed earlier, you should hold your webinar at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Time on Tuesday. If your message is going to be a lengthy one, make it consecutive, once per week.